In the meeting is qualified to begin to consider the agenda items. Board Member Wester, would you please let the audience know of our interpretive services for Spanish?
Buenas noches. Quería dejarles saber que si quieren escuchar la reunión en español, tenemos a la intérprete atrás que le puede dar dispositivos para que puedan escuchar la reunión en español. Gracias.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'd also like to thank our ASL interpreters, which are up here to my left this evening as well. Tonight's flag salute will be led by the Edison High School JROTC under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Carmen Hill. Please stand as we prepare for the flag salute and remain standing for the posting of colors.
At this time, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Board Member Hosmer, would you like to introduce this evening's cadets for us, please? I'm sorry. Would they like to introduce themselves this evening? Or Principal Vineyard, would you like to?
Good evening. My name is Clay Vineyard. I'm the principal at Edison Preparatory School, and I'm so proud of our JROTC, and I'm going to give them a quick second to introduce themselves to the crowd.
Hi, I'm Brendan Martinez in the 10th grade currently.
Hello, I'm Selena Sanchez, and I'm in the 11th grade.
Hello, I am Justin Alley, and I am a senior. I was the commander of the color guard.
Hi, I'm Jack Schultz. I'm a senior.
I am Ian Wamigo. I am a junior.
Awesome.
And I'd also like everyone to know that this weekend we were the winners of the prestigious Cadet Challenge here in TPS, and they've also won several different competitions this year in their drill competition. So it's a very good group, and we're very proud of them.
Bravo.
So, Madam President and others, I will tell you that it's our responsibility as staff to get those names to board members, but I actually kind of like them introducing themselves. That was nice. Gave us a little bit more information, so that was kind of nice, but I do apologize for that.
No, I agree. I'm always happy to hear myself talk, but it was nice to listen to them. So.
That's the key trait to being a professor, isn't it?
Pretty much.
Thank you, Eagles. Very well done, and congratulations on your wins this weekend. I'd like to remind those wishing to address the board to sign up with the clerk of the board, Ms. Sarah Bazone, sitting near the end of the table to my right. There is a 5-minute, I apologize, you guys, I'm tongue-tied today, a 5-minute time limit to those comments. And I want to remind speakers that in accordance with board policy, staff and board members will not enter into a dialogue with speakers during the meeting. Upon approval of the consent agenda, no additional speaker requests will be accepted. I want to thank you all for coming this evening. In education, we strive to be role models for our students, and we want to exhibit the same quality behaviors that we expect from them. So with this in mind, if you would please make sure that your cell phones are silenced and consider moving your conversations to the lobby, we would really appreciate it. It's very important for our board members and members of the audience to be able to hear the recommendations and the presentations. Dr. Gist, I understand we have a special guest this evening.
We do. Today, I had, along with members of our team and members of the Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association, had the opportunity to surprise our Teacher of the Year finalists, and we also surprised our Support Employee of the Year finalists. And we're going to come back at a future meeting with recognizing those folks and so forth, but we do happen to have one of our Teacher of the Year finalists in the room, Ashley Powell, who's a pre-K teacher at Owen Elementary. So we just wanted her to stand. She's going to, so we're going to acknowledge her. And then also wanted to acknowledge Irene Drew from the Tulsa County Council of PTAs. PTA is a very important partner with all of our schools and with the district as a whole, so we're grateful for your participation in the meeting tonight.
Thank you. As a high school teacher, I cannot think of anything scarier than pre-Kers or parents. So you both have my admiration this evening. All right, before considering a motion to adopt the agenda, Superintendent Gist, do you have any changes to tonight's agenda?
We have no changes tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adopt said agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you very much. I will call for the vote. Ms. Woolley?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Gist, do you have any special presentations for us this evening?
We do, Madam President and board members and other Tulsans who are joining us in a variety of ways. We have two different special presentations tonight. We're going to start with some guests from the City of Tulsa and members of our team to give an update on the Vision Tulsa Safety First initiative. So you will probably remember that in 2016 there was a tax renewal package that was passed by Tulsans, and it had a lot of different things in it that were beneficial for the city. And we were so pleased to be able to work in collaboration with the mayor and the city councilors on including items around safety around our school buildings. So this was $14.5 million for safety at 77 of our locations that included signage and sidewalks and so forth, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about it, so I won't give too much detail because I tend to do that. But I want to welcome Sue Ann Bell from our team. I also want to welcome Brent Stout, who's the Senior Special Projects Engineer at the City of Tulsa Engineering Services Department, and Esther Shaw-Smith, who's Project Engineer with Lee Engineering. So we've been working with them on this, and we want to hear more about the exciting work that's been happening to keep children safe in and around our schools.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gist and President Keller and members of the board and other guests. This is such an exciting report for us to be able to give an update on tonight. As Dr. Gist mentioned, we have been working on this since 2016. Actually, we started in 2015 putting this package together. So I want to recognize Jay Oates, our grounds manager. He spent a lot of time on this. From our team, because when we were giving the opportunity to put together a proposal, our team was immediately just blown away when we started looking at our schools and how our kids get to and from their home to school. And so the opportunities to improve that safety and to be able to work with Brent and Esther from the City of Tulsa has just been phenomenal. So I'm excited that they're here. I want them to be able to share this with you. Someone turn it over to them. And at the end, if you have any questions, we're here to answer. So let you guys take it.
Good evening. I'm Brent Stout, Engineering Services, and I'd like to go through the presentation, and then I'm going to turn it over to Esther Shaw in just a moment. I think it went away. There it goes. This is the Safety First initiative, and it is a part of the Vision Tulsa. A little bit of background information on this. This is part of the Vision Tulsa passed by voters in April 2016. There was $14.5 million allocated in sales tax over 4 years, 94 schools total. 77 of those are Tulsa Public Schools, 12 are in the Union Public School District, 5 are in Jenks. The schools are placed into 5 priorities based on occurrence of fatalities, student population, and location of school on roadway system. The school priorities 1 through 5 were identified previously before the project had started. There were a total of 77 TPS schools observed and assessed based on their existing conditions. The tasks that were included in the project included morning arrival operations, afternoon dismissal operations, an ADA walkthrough for compliance issues, sign and pavement marking assessment, a lighting assessment through the neighborhood and around the school, and a school safety audit report for each school. And with that, I'll turn it over to Esther Shaw-Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here tonight. I just want to go through a few of these goals here of what we wanted to do with Safety First. Obviously, we wanted to review the guidelines and the safety enhancements that we needed to follow at each site. We wanted to identify those pedestrian and bicycle routes around the schools to make those safer for students and for faculty as they travel to and from school. We conducted our field reviews and assessments and to identify any infrastructure deficiencies. We performed some vehicular and pedestrian counts where we knew that we had some issues with cars arriving or leaving the school, or a lot of pedestrians crossing streets. And then we also did the assessment with the ADA walkthrough, where we're evaluating sidewalk conditions, the presence or the lack of wheelchair ramps at intersections, and also the lighting at night. Here's a little bit of the funds allocation. As we've mentioned, $14.5 million over 4 years. Approximately 11 million of that is going to the TPS schools, those 77 schools that we've already identified. The remainder of that funds is being made up into the Jenks and Union school districts, and then we have engineering and surveying fees for the construction drawings. These improvements are including signage, striping. Most of those will be like that, the zebra style striping, those large stripes that you see across the crosswalks. Updated school zone flashers. We are updating all the school zone flashers at these schools to be on the cellular based system so that they can be remotely operated from the City of Tulsa Traffic Department. New pedestrian signals and actual traffic signals are included in those. Lighting, and then we also have addition of bus shelters, which is a new concept with the City of Tulsa right now. These will be shelters just for TPS centralized bus stops at locations that we've identified. And we're really fortunate that we've been working with MTTA that they're going to allow us to utilize some of those surplus shelters that they actually took off their routes last year. So we're trying to do some cost savings with them and some collaboration. So the process to get this whole thing started, there's a lot of schools to look at. When you think of 94 schools, it's like, how do you wrap your head around that? So first we set up meetings with all the school administrators and all the PTA that was involved just to get engagement at the beginning. We didn't, I'm not a native Tulsan, I'm a native Oklahoman, but not being around many schools in this area, I wanted to see what issues were already out there that we needed to be aware of before we went in to do our field assessments. So we met with all of those staff members, we met with principals, PTA members, we had counselors in there at some of these. We did have some student representatives who were sharing their ideas of what was going on, just to engage a lot of those folks up front. After that, we scheduled our operations to look at arrival and dismissal operations to see where we tried to be flies on the wall, basically. We did wear safety vests, but we kind of stood off to the side. We didn't really interact much, but just wanted to see how everyone was walking to and from school, how they were driving to and from school, just on a random, typical school day. Then after the arrival dismissal operations, we did walk the site. All of this money has to be spent on City of Tulsa right away, right? But we felt we'd be doing a disservice if we just stopped at the right of way. So we went ahead and looked at all the school sites completely around campus to look at deficiencies even on school property so that you guys could build a list for things to improve on your sites. With that, we provided our school safety audit report with short-term recommendations, which would include our safety first items that could be funded right now. We also looked at some long-term improvements that could be done if we ever had another big pot of money to spend within city right away. But then we broke down short and long-term on school property as well for your benefit. We sent all these reports in, the district, the principals, our Safety First Committee, the city, everyone's looked at those reports, kind of bought into those recommendations or provided their feedback on things that needed to be addressed. And then we've developed construction plans based on those recommendations. I'm going to cruise through this really fast, but this is a sample of what we provided in the safety audit report. So this is for Lindbergh. This was an example case. It was one of the priority 1 schools. We provided a school operations map. It basically shows how buses and parents and students will go to the school. The red is the parent loading zones. The bus is shown in blue. But this is a map they can use from here on out if they wanted to be able to provide that to their parents or in their handbooks or something like that. We did prepare a walking route map. This shows the safe routes that we could see that students could take to school. It identifies the crosswalk locations. The green shows the locations of sidewalks. The red show locations with no sidewalks, but areas we still think they could walk. And then we show where the school is at. But this is also something they could prepare and put in their handbook as well. Then we identified our safety first recommendations based on our assessments. This includes a lot of signing. You see a lot of school zone signs, some do not enter signs. One thing we noticed around these sites, TPS has really tried hard to provide some traffic operation signage around, but they're not MUTCD or state standard signs. So to be able to make those enforceable, we felt like we needed to replace those signs with actual MUTCD state standard signs. And then at this location, I actually got a traffic signal there on 11th and 89th, so that was pretty good for them. We did identify locations of sidewalks and crosswalks as well. Here's a look at what we recommended on school property. So this is showing a pavement rehabilitation, a bike rack, some striping through that pickup loop. Long term, this is something that we would say if we had all the pot of money or another pot of money, we would need to build sidewalks into these schools. And so this is what this long-term recommendation is. Then we gave a list. I didn't put all of the long-term on here just because you couldn't see it. So just for the safety first funds, Lindbergh was allocated $355,500 at the beginning of this project, and we tried to max them out is what we did. So we're right under that number, but being able to accommodate all of those safety first improvements that we recommended. Here's our working group, and this is just kind of all the stakeholders and all the ones who share information along this whole project. So it includes, myself and the City of Tulsa, but we've always brought in the Tulsa Police Department, TPS, Union, Jinx, obviously their administrators. We've brought in the City of Tulsa Traffic, Streets and Stormwater, school administrators, PTAs, homeowners associations. You can kind of see that laundry list here to the side. Everyone who you can think about, I think, is probably in some way or another been involved in this process in the last several years. Just a little overview of where we're at. Bid package 1, it was for priority 1 and 2 schools, so around 43 sites, and that was only for traffic signing, signals, and pavement markings, and that is wrapped up. We're doing final inspections now. So we're really good, and hopefully you guys have seen some of those improvements out, and you've seen some signals, and you've seen some new flashers, and you've seen some new striping. That's part of this package. The second package is under construction right now. It just got started last month, so you haven't seen any new sidewalks or drainage yet, but that is coming, and they're working at the priority 1 and 2 school sites. And then package 3 is lighting and bus shelters. So the lighting, you've probably seen some of this going up. PSO is nearly complete with all the priority 1 and 2 schools. And the bus shelters will come once we get all of the priorities completed and we get our agreement signed. Here's just a little bit of construction progress, just pictures of things that have been installed. We have, like I said, crosswalks, ramps, school zone flasher, rapid flash beacons at school crossings. We have signals, just the one over there on Harvard and 56th. And this is kind of our timeline as we go through. Right now we're in plan development for priorities 3, 4, and 5 schools. We hope to have all of those in construction drawings by the end of this year with completed construction by the end of next summer. And then the finish line. But we're going to continue to have our progress meetings. We hold these monthly. Anyone's welcome to join. And then use our long-term improvements list to try to build for future packages, whether that be on school property for bond elections or through the city of Tulsa to go after another sales tax. And then also, we always want to be cognizant of the other E's. We can engineer the world out of everything. I mean, ask me, I'll give you plans for anything. But you have to have everything else. You have to have enforcement. TPD has got to be on board with us. You've got to encourage these kids to walk to school. You've got to provide the infrastructure. You've got to educate them on how to properly use these facilities and parents of how the operations actually go at the school. And then you need to evaluate. Once everything's done, you need to see if everything's working the way that you thought it would. So with that, I'm going to take questions, and Brent's here to help as well. Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. We think about the moment at which we are, advocating and working with our mayor and our city councilors to get this included in the package, and when we're asking Tulsans to support it. And one of the things, by the way, for you to know is that Tulsans, the feedback that the city was getting is that overwhelmingly this was one of the things that really drew people to support the package, because they believe that kids should be safe. So we're so grateful to Tulsans for that, and to our city leaders, and to those of you who are making the implementation possible. I also want to go back just to where Sue Ann started with, without Sue Ann and Jay Oates, when she kind of glossed over what they did to prepare us to be able to advocate this deep analysis of every single building that we have, what was needed around every single building, why it was needed, what was needed. It was this extensive report that we were then able to use to very specifically advocate and ask for the funds that we needed for this work. So awesome work to all of you. We're extraordinarily grateful. There's nothing more important to any of us, I know, than keeping our children and our team members safe every day. So thank you. More. Okay. Special presentation number 2 is also exciting, but a completely different note. Board President Keller suggested this, and we thought it was an awesome idea. There's a lot happening in our athletics team right now, and in all kinds of ways. So on Saturday morning, we had our school pride race. So our running clubs and bike clubs and our PE teachers were all out along with their families in full force. We also have our basketball tournament well underway for this week, and then we have other exciting things that have happened too. So at the request of our board president, we've asked Coach Cloud to come back again to be with us at this board meeting to just give us an update on where we are, what's happening next, and what we should all be expecting for the next few days.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, and Madam President, and board members and patrons. This has been a good winter for our student athletes. We've been able to have some success, and we've added some programs that were almost gone at one point. But I'll go through the other programs and then talk about basketball at the end. Wrestling this year, Rogers had the very first female wrestler at 215 pounds. Tanika Anderson was a state qualifier for the first time in Tulsa Public Schools. From McLean, Ronita Parker was also a state qualifier. So we had 2 girls, and people say, girls wrestling? Let me tell you that girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport in Oklahoma. This year, these were exhibition matches for female wrestlers. Next year, there'll be actual state championship for teams for women's wrestling. And we have already queried our directors at the sites, and we'll be implementing that as we go along in our program. But really, really exciting there for the wrestling. Webster, for the first time in 20 years, had 3 state qualifiers. First time in 20 years. That's amazing. And all of our numbers are really good. Edison, with 23 in the room, had a state championship at heavyweight. And that is fantastic. That was Whitney Ashland, a state champion. So we're excited about that. Cheer, Booker T qualified for the state tournament in cheer. They also will participate this year in a new program called a cheer stunt, where they actually do stunts and so on. Rogers and Webster participated in game day cheer, and game day cheer is a whole new thing where they literally give you a down in situation of a football game, and in 1 minute you have to do that cheer that is relevant to that particular thing. So that's a new deal, and I think we're really excited about that. Swimming, Booker T moving up in the class was not good for them after winning the 2 state championships and having 2 runner-ups and so on and moving to 6A. But they did have a state championship team with their 400 girls freestyle. Their numbers continue to be good, 23 boys and 19 girls in the swim program there. Edison, we're able to have swimming for Edison, even though we did the pool away about 3 years ago now, by co-oping with them and Memorial using the same coach. The Activity Association allows us to do that. So we had 5 boys and 7 girls, and that was from 0 4 years ago. So we're up 12 kids in that program. Excited about that. The one program, and I have to give it to Dr. Gist, because when we talked about this program, it was almost dysfunctional at Memorial. And this past year, Memorial now has 22 kids in the swimming program, and we're excited about that continuing and growing as we go on, and Coach Bentley does a great job there with swimming. The last area is one we're most proud of, obviously, basketball. We had 9 teams going into the area tournament. We came out with 6 going to the state tournament. Fantastic effort by our young people, our coaches. We were at most of them. Some of them played the same time. We couldn't all from our office get there, but literally Booker T, Memorial, Edison, Webster boys, Will Rogers, and East Central girls. So to have 6 in the state championship, and people always look at us and say, well, how many did Oklahoma City have? Well, they had 2. So we're ahead 6-2. Really looking forward. I might give you a quick first night schedule. Booker T plays at Memorial. They play Putnam City West, and that would be at 3:30. Memorial plays MacArthur from Lawton at Skiatook at 3:30. Edison plays Shawnee at Skiatook at 7 o'clock. And Webster plays Heritage Hall at Edmond Deer Creek outside Oklahoma City. Will Rogers girls play Ardmore at Owasso at 3:30. Notice we have 3 games at 3:30. And Edison girls will play Piedmont at Owasso at 7 p.m. Central, Booker T girls, Central boys, Booker T girls, and Edison girls all made it to the area tournament. So that was our 9 there. It was really a good winter. To have a McDonald's All-American in Bryce Thompson, which is very unique. There's not many of those in America. And we had that one. Of course, he signed with Kansas. Trey Phipps has signed with Oklahoma. At National Signing Day, we had 56 student athletes that signed to continue with their education with athletic-related aid. And we're looking at having 25 more for the later signing date in April. I spent 20 years in the college business as a director of athletics, and we always had a meeting. NCAA rule is you have to meet with your kids at least once during the year, and we'd have them all the first week. And I would be the last one to speak after the president was the first one to speak, obviously. And I would say, while you're here, you'll take a lot of trips. But to me, the most important trip you take is across the stage. We still believe that. That's what we want to do. Keep our kids in school, retain them, and graduate them, and move on. Do you have any questions? thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Coach Cloud. You and your team do an extraordinary job with our schools and the athletic directors and coaches at each of our schools, and so we're very grateful. It's incredibly important for our students to have strong athletic programs. Thank you.
Coach Cloud, I know you just got sat down, but didn't my East Central Cardinal girls make it to the state tournament as well?
They're playing at Old Boston. All the girls are playing at Will Rogers and East Central are playing at Old Boston.
Okay.
They play at 7 o'clock. Rogers plays at 3:30.
Okay. Maybe I just heard Central.
It's the whole reason that she had you. She
It
just
really-
wanted you to talk about East Central.
If we're being honest, it really might have been that, yeah. Very proud of my Cardinals. All right, that brings us, thank you guys very much, by the way, for being here. Coach Cloud, and I think I saw Sue Ann and our city guests sneak out, but thank you to all for those incredible presentations. We're all very excited about the Safety First initiative, and certainly very proud of all of our teams and all of their accomplishments in the winter and spring sports. So, okay, that brings us to approval of minutes. Item D. Approve the minutes of February 24th, 2020 regular meeting of the board and the February 13th and February 18th, 2020 special meetings of the board. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much. I will call for the vote. Ms. Wester?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Hosmer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Wester. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Ms. Marshall?
E6.
Bingo?
That's my question.
E6.
I want to understand E6. Purchase of musical instruments for various sites. What are the various sites? Who determines the various sites? And what is the criteria used to determine the various sites?
This item pertains to bond dollars that are provided for, specifically for our fine arts programming. Every year we've got fine arts coordinators who assess the needs at the individual music programs and then provide instruments based on those needs for our elementary, middle, and high school. And it depends on the location, what programs they have, what teachers are teaching, and so for what music that would be provided at those specific sites. I will have to get more details on the actual school sites out of this that will receive the instruments, but I can do that and bring it back to the board.
I would like to have clarification as to which schools will be benefiting from this bond money. We talk about equity, and I just want to ensure that across the district, this bond money is going to be shared by all of our schools. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Ms. Woolley?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fletcher, we look forward to hearing your answers on that question.
For this particular allotment, it's all secondary sites that will receive instruments out of the $300,000.
Distributed evenly, or?
Based on need, and so we'll have to get back with more details about the specifics of each instrument that they're receiving, but we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to our action agenda this evening. We have 3 items on our action agenda. Item F1, is to enter into a contract with Musical Theater International Production for royalty and rental for performance of Xanadu. Performance dates for this production will be March 26th and 27th, 2020. This is for the students, about the students, and a lot of this is done by the students. It is to better their abilities to perform, adapt, and be comfortable on and off stage, and how to work alone and with others in a theatrical setting. Teamwork, quick and creative thinking skills, and many more skills and values are nurtured in the development in this field. I will entertain a motion to approve item F1.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions about item F1?
President Keller, it's not noted in here, but this is for Booker T. Washington. This item was submitted by their principal and director of the performance.
That answers my question.
Thank you, Ms. Shannon. Mine as well. Are there any other questions about item F1 in the production of Xanadu at Booker T. Washington? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Board Member Woolley? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. That brings us to item F2, to name the new field house at McLean High School, Tulsa McLean Athletic Center. Name the basketball court. Ms. Marshall, I know I'm going to butcher that. Would you mind?
Bolton.
Bolton.
Piggies.
Piggies. I apologize. So to name the basketball court, Bolton Piggies Court. Name the hospitality suite, Joe Shoulders Hospitality Suite. And name the entrance into the gym, Tatia Brown Commons area. I know our McLean naming committee worked very hard on these recommendations, and we're very excited to bring them forward. I will call for, actually, you know what? I'm going to read the rationale because I feel like it honors our naming people. Sorry about that, you guys. In accordance with Board Policy 8102 and Board Regulation, an ad hoc committee was formed to select names for the new field house facilities at McLean. In accordance with policy, the committee held 4 meetings, a public forum, and conducted a survey to solicit community input. Tulsa McLean Athletic Center. The committee selected this name because it reinforces the branding of McLean High School and indicates the location of the school. Bolton Piggies Court. The committee chose this name to honor Coach Mike Bolton and Coach Luther Piggies, who are both retired McLean coaches, educators, and TPS Athletics Hall of Fame members. Joe Shoulders Hospitality Suite. The committee chose this name to honor Joe Shoulders, who is a retired coach and educator at McLean High School and a Hall of Fame member. Tatia Brown Commons Area. The committee chose this name to honor Tatia Brown, who was an outstanding McLean student athlete inducted into the TPS Athletics Hall of Fame and a member of the Women's National Championship basketball team at Louisiana Tech University in 1988. I will entertain a motion to approve item F2.
Move approval.
Second.
Excellent. Will there be any questions or discussion?
Big thanks to the naming committee and coming up with all these just super meaningful, community-related names. I think it means a lot.
Absolutely. Okay, seeing no other questions or discussion, I will call for the vote. Board Member Wester.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. That brings us to item F3. Oh, congratulations, McLean Athletic Center. That brings us to item F3, enter into a memorandum of understanding with Northeastern State University to provide a concurrent enrollment education course for TPS high school students who are eligible during the 2019-2020 school year. The rationale is that providing our students with opportunities to gain collegiate credit while enrolled at TPS ensures they continue to be challenged academically. Additionally, growing our teacher workforce is paramount to the long-term viability of our teaching workforce. Partnering with NSU will create the first stage in a larger teacher pipeline strategy by providing our students who are interested in education with the opportunity to start on that path. NSU is a leader in developing educators, and this presents a unique opportunity for the district to leverage their expertise. I will entertain a motion to approve item F3.
Move approval.
Second.
Excellent. Are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Wester?
I do have a couple questions. Which schools would have access to this opportunity? And the second is, what would be the qualifications for it?
Chief Fletcher.
Thank you. For the 2021 school year, all high school juniors and seniors will have access for this program. But for the spring 2019-2020 pilot, which will begin on March 11th and go through May 6th, students who met the admissions criteria were included for the pilot. And then each of the school sites were asked if they had students that were interested in continuing. Individual meetings were had with select students who showed interest, and then of those we'll have, I believe we'll have 7 students that are piloting from Edison and Booker T. Washington for the spring. And then as far as admissions requirements for NSU, NSU requires students to participate in who participate to have a 3.0 GPA, class rank in the top 50% of their cohort, and a composite ACT score of 20 or SAT score of 1030. As the spring continues, part of the reason that we're piloting is to understand how we could improve the program over the course of the upcoming year, give more students access, and to work on creating opportunities for students who don't meet the admissions requirements so that they have a strong opportunity to enter into this pipeline.
Ms. Marshall?
How will we market or get the information out to the students and parents concerning this program?
We've been working directly with school leaders, and their school counselors who submitted surveys to students. And then as the full program launches, we'll have a communication strategy that will go out, and it'll be through various modalities, including social media, as well as letters home to families, and getting students access in their freshman academy, so that we're starting to communicate this early, and then they'll be prepared to enter into the program in their junior or senior year, so that they have time to make sure that their grades and admissions criteria are being met. So,
will we have a system of checks and balances in place? Because oftentimes I know that I get numerous calls, even in relationship to scholarships, where the information is not being disseminated within our schools. So will we have a system of checks and balances to ensure that this information is getting disseminated throughout the district to all students?
yes, and what happens currently is that when there's school leader communication and counselor communication, there are monthly meetings that happen with counselors, so they get the download of opportunities and packets of how to share that information, and we will be working with students and following up on that. And it's a cross collaboration between the talent team as well as our post-secondary readiness team and schools. And we believe that we've got a system in place that will allow for all students to have access to the program if they so choose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Ms. Schreiber?
So I'm assuming that this is going to take place on the NSU campus in Broken Arrow, or?
It's going to take place at Wilson Teaching and Learning Academy,
Okay.
and we know that there are issues of access given transportation and other things, and so for students who were interested, if transportation were a barrier, we provided opportunities for them to have access to get to the site.
So we provide transportation for them to get to even Wilson?
Yes.
And then is it a live course?
It is.
Like okay.
There will be a professor that is present there.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Ms. Woolley?
So this says a concurrent enrollment education course. Does that mean they're able to participate in one course? And it also says there's no cost to the district. So are students paying for this, or is Northeastern waiving it, or how is that working?
There's no cost for this pilot program, and there is it's concurrent one course for this because it's a pilot for the 8 weeks, and then that'll launch into a series or a sequence over time.
Do we have any idea what that series or sequence might look like at this point? Or are we still like super early?
Relatively early, and the reason for the pilot is to understand and engage with students. But what it would likely do is give students access to understanding what the profession of teaching will entail, and then over time it actually begins to give students access to understanding things like classroom management and intro to pedagogical content, which in this particular case, I'm going to look at Quentin, but they'll get access to what is a junior level college course as in high school for this first 8-week sequence, which is amazing, and sets them up for a path that launches them towards the teaching profession.
Ms. Marshall?
Did I miss it? Who is paying for this? I understand it's no cost to the district, but
NSU is providing the services free of charge because they believe in the partnership with us and our students, and we partner with them on a number of other fronts. And so this is an opportunity to grow the teaching profession, which is something that we're continuing to do and reach out to all of our partners. It provides access to students who are underrepresented and gives them opportunity in advance so that we can get more applicants who mirror the background of our students in the program and in teaching, which is something that I think we've talked about here before.
One final question. The transportation is to and from their home school or where they're enrolled?
From their home school, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, board members, for your excellent questions, and Chief Fletcher for your answers. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just our TPS staff is also going to be involved in helping to support the students and the program as well over time. So it gives them an opportunity to build a relationship with teachers who are in the profession and hear from them and continue to cultivate student-teacher relationships through the program.
That's fantastic. I'm very excited. I hope the pilot goes really well, and I hope we get a lot of kids interested in our noble profession. So, okay, so I have a motion and a second, correct? Fantastic. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Ms. Wester?
Aye.
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 Aye. That brings us to the information agenda, which I will turn over to Dr. Gist.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to start by just actually thanking you all for F3. This is incredibly exciting. It's a great opportunity for our students. It's also consistent with our belief that we can grow our own educators right here in Tulsa. And so I want to say give huge compliments to the team for building that partnership and putting this in place. It's hugely, hugely exciting and really, really a wonderful opportunity. Moving on to the information agenda, just reminding the board members and others who are watching that information items are brought to the board for discussion. They're not acted upon. They're here just to be able to answer questions, and they come those 2 weeks ahead of time in order to give board members a chance to discuss and ask questions. If they come back as a consent agenda item or an action item, that's when they're acted upon, but they're brought first for information for discussion purposes. Occasionally, some items, if they're time sensitive, will go on for action, but we make sure that the board members are aware of the addition of those items. We're going to start with G1 through G5. These will be presented by our Deputy Superintendent, Paula Shannon. Ms. Shannon.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Board President Keller, members of the board. Item G1 and item G2 are routine items related to proms at Hell High School and at Central High School. Item G3 and item G5, actually exciting. These are contracts with Post Oak Lodge to support work that both Patrick Henry and MacArthur Elementary are doing as they work to create an inclusive school community. As you know, both of these schools will be receiving a number of staff members and students from schools that were consolidated or closed. So the principals are working to create opportunities for staff to come together and do team development. So that's what those contracts support. And item G4. Thank you. Another exciting opportunity to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Tulsa Dream Center for academic enrichment opportunities for students at John Hope Franklin and Monroe Demonstration Academy from March 24th of this year through June 30th. I believe that Tim Newton is here, and he runs the programs out of the Dream Center, so happy to see him here tonight. The Dream Center currently administers 21st Century Community Learning Center grants awarded through the Oklahoma State Department of Education with Tulsa Public Schools as the primary partner. So again, the Dream Center wrote those grants and received them from the OSDE. I believe that the partnership with the Monroe Demonstration Academy runs through 2022, and for John Hope Franklin through 2023. Dream Center was a great partner as we worked through and navigated the 21st Century grants, continuing to support schools as we were closing PIN, consolidating, and transferring over aspects of the 21st Century funding to support the students at Monroe. And the same when we consolidated Bunch and Gilcrease into John Hope Franklin. So they were great partners in that, so the students would continue to benefit. When it comes from, because I anticipate these questions. When it comes to results, we're seeing increased reading performance and math performance across multiple grade levels for the students participating in the program, as well as better attendance for students who participate in the Dream Center program after school than students who do not at those two school sites. Again, the Dream Center has been a longer-term partner, and we're excited about both this year and the future with the 21st Century grant at these two sites. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those items.
Before we get to board member questions, as I'm certain Ms. Wester is chomping at the bit, we have a couple of speakers who actually have signed up to speak to this item, to both G3 and G5. So if you wouldn't, and G4, Mr. Huffines, I apologize. If you guys wouldn't mind speaking to all of your agenda items up front, we would really appreciate it. So Mr. Huffines and Ms. Remington. Looks like Mr. Huffines is making a beeline, if you don't mind, Ms. Remington.
Thank you. Peace. Yes, peace. Greetings to our Honorable Superintendent, Dr. Gist, our Madam President, Shauna Keller, and each of our Honorable Tulsa Public School Board members and honorable staff and team. We are grateful for all the teachers and citizens of this great city, Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a joy to be with you on this 9th day of March in the year of our loving Lord Jesus Christ, 2020. Yes. G3, recommendation. Enter into a contract with Post Oak Lodge and Retreat, Tulsa, Oklahoma, to host MacArthur Elementary School's Teachers Retreat in June. Rationale. The summer is a crucial time for teachers to decompress and reflect on the previous year and also plan for the next one. We are lucky, maybe blessed could be another word we could use there, in our line of work to get a clean slate each school year, and this event seeks to equip our teachers with the relationships, support, and skills needed to take on the 2020-2021 school year with confidence. This event seeks to, or perhaps more accurately, we maybe could say the persons responsible for this event seek to equip our teachers with relationships, support, and skills needed to take on the 2020-2021 school year with confidence. May the organizers of this event honor Jesus Christ, the Son of God, thereby creating an atmosphere welcoming our greatest teacher, the Holy Spirit. I am suggesting we equip our teachers with the love, joy, peace, gentleness, and strength offered in God's Word, the Holy Bible. G4, recommendation. Enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Tulsa Dream Center, Tulsa, Oklahoma, as Deputy Shannon has already beautifully shared, to provide academic enrichment opportunities to students at John Hope Franklin and Monroe Demonstration Academy. Rationale. The Dream Center provides academic enrichment opportunities during our out-of-school time hours for children, particularly students who attend high poverty and low performing schools. And they have potential to be high performing schools for sure. The program helps students meet state and local student standards in core academic subjects such as reading and math, offers students a broad array of enrichment activities that can complement their regular academic programs, and offers literacy and other educational services to the families of participating children. I'm grateful for the Dream Center offering their services. I've heard excellent reports about the Dream Center. Yes to G4. G9, I suppose I will go ahead and pass on that. Excuse me, I will do G9. I'll pass on G16. Enter into a contract, G9. Enter into a contract with the most responsive and responsible bidder to provide strategic school planning support to district and site personnel. May our strategic school planning include honoring God, His creation, and embrace and promote love and light. Yes, magnify God's words as found in our Holy Bible. Rationale. The goal of this work is to provide capacity building and training to district staff so we may continue supporting schools during their annual school planning process. As a result of this training, district staff will be poised to further support school leaders to use their resources to meet their annual goals. May their resources and annual goals include songs of praise to our Lord Jesus Christ and honoring sacred scriptures as found in our Holy Bible. This creates an atmosphere for truth, for learning, for enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huffines. Ms. Remington.
And I have G3, G5, and G16. G3 and 5, I'm not really understanding why aren't all of the schools receiving the students doing the same retreat, Carnegie, Key, Marshall, and Wayman, Tisdale. And why aren't all teachers being included in this type of retreat? That's going to cost the district almost $8,000. And whenever you look at G3 and G5, you see where the fund is not listed as far as where the money is coming from. That would be nice to know that. Also, looking it over, it looks like MacArthur is going to actually get 2 days, whenever Patrick Henry gets 1 day for close to the same price. How is this very competitive pricing from Post Oak? G16, this is for the funding for the PR position. This was a position that was previously cut by TPS, so I'm not really understanding why this is a contractor position for $116,000 whenever we've got $20 million that we are now still in the hole and we still don't have a lot of answers. What made up to that $20 million? And I have one more question. On G16, I feel like we really need a marketing expert, not just another company that really doesn't understand TPS. We need somebody that works closely related with Dr. Gist and not just somebody that's at a charter school doing their marketing for them. And again, I feel like that cutting people to set it out to do another contractor, where we've seen a lot of problems with all of these out-of-state contractors. I know this person's not out of state, but I don't really understand why we're using contractors when we should be using people in these roles to hire these positions. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Remington. Are there any board questions regarding items G1 through 5? Ms. Wester.
For G4, how many students, do we know how many students they've served in the past and how many they hope to serve in the future?
I don't, Board Member Wester, I don't have how many they've served in the past. I can tell you that at John Hope Franklin this year, they're serving 185 children, and at Monroe, they will be serving 120 children, I think, with plans to increase that in upcoming years.
Perfect. And I did have questions a question for G3 and G5. Well, I'm very, very happy to see that MacArthur and Patrick Henry have the ability to spend some quality time to reflect and plan. Was the location selected because of funder request or because it is cost effective or both?
So actually what we did is we're working with all receiving school principals to support them. We've set the expectation and are supporting school leaders and their leadership teams in developing strong transition plans and in doing comparable work in terms of how they're welcoming their families and their teachers and the kind of team development that they endeavor to do. We believe that our principals are closest to the ground and closest to their teachers, so we're giving them the authority to make the decisions about how they're going about planning. As they are unable to leverage, I should put it another way, as they need additional supports for some of the planning, like sometimes Title I doesn't support certain things like a retreat venue, we're able to step in and honor the types of plans that they're making. So all of the receiving schools are doing work. They're making choices based upon what they're trying to do as a school community. These two schools decided that they wanted to leverage the Post Oak Lodge. A lot of the principals like to leverage that site. One of the schools, I forget which one's doing which, one of the schools is doing an overnight there, while the other is doing just 2 days and not staying the night there. So that accounts for some of the cost differential. So I guess to your question, it's principal choice.
Perfect, thank you.
Ms. Fate.
Yes, I've had a constituent ask about funding for number 3 and number 5, and if you'll notice on there, they're donor funded. And then on 16, that's a bond issue.
Thank you, Ms. Fate. Are there any other questions or comments regarding items G1 through 5?
I was going to ask in regards to G4, Ms. Shannon, did you mention that you thought these went through like 2022 or something like that?
Yes.
But that's not reflected
Well,
here, right?
we bring it the memorandum of understanding is updated each year. And so we're at the point where, because there were changes that we had to make with OSDE, given that the grant was initially awarded to Penn, so we worked with the state to be able to leverage the 21st Century Grant at Monroe. So that's why we're bringing MOU for the remainder of this year. We bring all of our 21st century schools to the board. So as a reminder, you've approved MOUs for Youth at Heart, Tulsa Debate League, and Touch Tulsa. You're now, you have before you the opportunity to approve the MOU for Dream Center. Then as we enter the 2021 school year, we'll bring those MOUs back to you for renewal.
So-
And the grant period is 5 years.
Okay, so they'll all come back together, all 5 of them?
We
Or
tend
whatever
to
you
bring
just-
them separately, but we'll bring them back to you typically across the summer for approval.
Thank you.
I just want to clear up a little bit of confusion on items G3 and G5. I'm not sure if maybe our public copies don't have the donor fund words on them in the funding spot, but our copies at the board table do show that 3 and 5 are being paid for out of donor funds.
And to be specific, those are grants managed by the Foundation for Tulsa Schools.
Fantastic. And item G16, I know we're not quite there yet, but it is also donor funded.
And that item as well is managed by a grant through the Foundation for Tulsa Schools.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's move on, and if we have some more questions on those, we can come back in just a few minutes. So, Dr. Gist, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam President. Moving on to items G6 and G7. These will be presented by our Chief of Talent and Learning, Devin Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, Madam President, members of the board. Item G6 is a recommendation to enter into an agreement with Heart Springs of Wichita, Kansas, to provide educational needs and supports in a residential setting for one of our students for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. This item should not exceed $100,000. Pause if there are any questions there.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about Heart Spring of Wichita, Kansas, their institutional profile, and the length of time that TPS has had an association with this group?
Heart Springs is a residential treatment facility that serves students with exceptional needs that are typically not fully able to be supported within a school district for varying reasons. The district has been in partnership with Heart Springs for a number of years, and we've had students who have attended there over time. Our last student that was placed there was 2 years ago. Heart Springs is a location that is used by many districts in the state because the state does not have a facility such as this, and so the Oklahoma State Department of Education generally partners with Heart Springs for districts who have truly exceptional needs. And so they'll broker agreements for those students along with us.
And who runs Heart Springs?
Who runs the
runs it?
hospital, I would have to get back up to you on that information. It's through this private hospital facility.
It's a
through the
private
state.
hospital facility and not through the state. It's a private entity.
It's a state facility, but that is, I believe, is run privately.
And we don't know. You don't know who runs it.
It's hard. I'd have to look up that information for you. What I do know is that in the state of Kansas, that it's the facility that they are able to use with the benefits provided by the state, and so I know that there's public access to it. We pay the fee because we don't have a location here in the state of Oklahoma to use.
Ms. Marshall.
It's my understanding that the State Department of Education, they have emergency funds for students that have to be sent out of state to a facility like Heart Springs. Have we applied for that emergency monies to assist in this placement?
Yes, we have, and just for record, the state does have an emergency fund. It is a limited amount of funding that they provide to the entire state. What happens is that once those funds have been used, they're used in perpetuity until the student who they've placed and provided funds to graduate from the program or age out of the programs. In this particular case, we did apply for the emergency funds and we'll receive a portion of reimbursement for this particular student through the remainder of the school year, and then it will be reassessed going forward.
Thank you.
I think what you're raising is incredibly important, and I'll just take a moment to advocate for the fact that we don't have enough resources made available by the state for students whose needs are really extensive. And I think a lot of people in the public don't realize that we have a number of students whose needs are $30,000, $50,000, even greater than $200,000 per student. And so it is, we're glad that the state has that available, but it is, especially relative to other places I've lived, not as much as it needs to be, to say the least. And it really is an area, we've talked about Senate Bill 362 and changing the weights. Well, that's one thing that could be done. The other thing that could be done is acknowledging the really high cost needs that some of our students have, and we want to be able to serve those students well, so we do. But when that happens, it means that those funds come from resources that we're then unable to use for the rest of the students in the district. So thank you for bringing up that point.
Thank you, Chief Fletcher.
And to Dr. Hosmer's question, it's a nonprofit organization. It was started in 1934 under another name of the Institute of Logopedics, and name has changed, but it still remains to be a nonprofit in the state of Kansas. And so the fees that are paid are nominal fees given the types of services that are provided, because it's 24-hour full care for the folks who are involved in the program. Item G7 is the approve an agreement with Modus to provide transportation services to and from work study programs for vocational training at Bridges A New Leaf, Goodwill Industries, and this provides the services for our students who have exceptional needs that are in the vocational training programs, not to exceed the cost of $2,200. I'll pause for any questions if there are any.
Ms. Wester?
I would like to know at some point how much we are spending on MODIS as a whole. I know that it's actually a really good service that they provide because there's nothing else like it in the city of Tulsa. And so it would be nice to know how many of our students are being served and how much we're having to pay overall for everything.
Today, we've spent $2,790 across 3 different teams who use the services. That is roughly equates to about $15 per student who uses the program. We've encumbered $13,000 to date, but again, only have used $2,790.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you so much, board members, for that exchange. And Mr. Fletcher, we're going to move on to,
I think. No.
You did G7?
I did,
Yep. We're good.
Other was action.
Thanks
yeah.
for checking. We'll move on to G8, and I'm really, really pleased to see this one coming before the board. And we're going to turn it over to our Chief Design and Innovations Officer, Andrea Castaneda. Ms. Castaneda.
Madam President, members of the board, this item authorizes us to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Tulsa Job Corps, and I think one of the important parts about this is it allows Tulsa Public Schools to dually enroll and jointly support all eligible students who are once underway, who are enrolled in Tulsa Job Corps. Tulsa Job Corps provides as a Department of Labor program, and it provides 16 to 24-year-olds with the opportunity to finish high school and to earn a post-secondary training credential. What's unique about it is that they also get health care, a stipend, residential living, child care if they need it, so it's a full spectrum of support. We do have students there, and also once students join Tulsa Job Corps, if they're age eligible, they often become residentially eligible because they are living in Tulsa. Under this agreement, what would happen is that we would provide the teachers at the Tulsa Job Corps site. Our teachers would provide the academic program that goes along with the technical training program that Tulsa Job Corps would continue to offer. We've been meeting with them, and I think that we feel optimistic that this is really a win-win for everyone. We get to provide some high-quality instructional services, use our curriculum, provide all of our special services, but we also get to ensure that our students have got the benefit of all the other assets that Tulsa Job Corps can offer. I'm happy to pause here and answer questions.
I have a question. Do our teachers receive stipends for participating in this?
We would have to actually hire teachers, and they would be compensated according to the collective bargaining agreement, so they would be compensated like all of the other teachers in our district, not additionally stipended.
So this isn't like an extra duty job, it's
No.
an actual
This is a
full-time
full-time teaching job, yeah.
gig. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Marshall?
Will classes take place at the Job Corps facility?
Yes, they will.
Thank you.
So my question is this the first time TPS is having an agreement with Tulsa Job Corps? Because I know that they've been around for eons.
Yeah, and I would also just like to credit Principal Spear at Tulsa Learning Academy, who was the first person that I know of to really call this to our attention and say, hey, here's a great opportunity to provide even better services to students and also enroll all of the eligible students jointly in there in our programs. This has been done, this dual enrollment approach has been done in a few other regions in the country, and our MOU is modeled after those.
Ms. Schreiber?
Will this be available to our students in like Phoenix Rising or in some alternative schools?
Yeah, actually, and it's currently eligible to them. There are some eligibility requirements. Students have to be income eligible, meaning that they need to be in the foster care system or at or near poverty wages. eligible for public assistance. Plus, they need to have a few other aspects of their personal background make them eligible. So, for example, no criminal offenses. Besides that, all of our students are already eligible and would continue to be so.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the only requirement that they do have that could affect a lot of our kids is that you have to be a U.S. citizen.
Yes, yes, that's true. There are a few other ones that affect them, but thank you for adding that. You do have to be eligible to work. So a slight modification on citizenship, eligible to work in the United States.
Ms. Marshall.
I know when Principal Spear was working on meeting with Tulsa Job Corps, she was, one of the things that she was doing with TLA was making referrals for students that needed our services for counseling or medical, any type of situations like that. Will the students be able to still get those services or those referrals through TPS?
Well, let's see here. I think that it's probably important to separate services. We'll be responsible for providing any of the services that would be due to any of our other students if they were enrolled in, say, Memorial High School. And so that does often include a spectrum of services, special education, English language learners, counseling services. Tulsa Job Corps has their own services, and in some ways, I think that's the most important part of this partnership is that they can complement with after school, evening, and break support because students continue to live on site. And it, in some cases, gives students who have additional needs a lot more access to support.
Great. Thank you.
Very, very exciting partnership. I love it.
It is very exciting, and I'm glad you credited Principal Spear with creating the original opportunity really by building that relationship even more strongly than had been in place, and credit to you and to Jana Burke as well for working out all of the details. Really appreciate it, and I'm glad to see it come before the board. We'll move on to, and thank you to all of you for those questions and discussion items. Moving on to G9, this will be presented by our Chief Financial Officer, Chief Delgadillo.
Thank you, Dr. Guest, Madam President, members of the board. Item G9 is a recommendation to enter into a contract with the most responsive and responsible bidder to provide strategic school planning support to district and site personnel. This contract is a result of a request for proposal, RFP 20028, which, by the way, our requests for proposals are available online. So that one specifically as well can also be read online. And the cost is currently in the bidding phase. So the contractor's name and amounts will be presented on the consent agenda. And the rationale for this work is it's an extension and continuation of the work that started this school year. The goal of this work is to provide capacity building and training to district staff so that we may continue supporting schools during the annual school planning process. As a result of this training, district staff will be poised to further support school leaders to use their resources to meet their annual goals. I'll stop there, see if there are any questions.
I'm going to pause right there. Before we have any questions from board members, we do have a speaker this evening who would like to speak to this item. Ms. Foster.
Yeah, there's not a lot of information in this thing. We don't know where money's coming from to pay for stuff. We got donors mixed in with the general fund. We've got I don't even know what this is, the support services. It sounds like all of the positions you fired. So I guess we're going to outsource it. Is what it looks like. Because if you're asking for a bid, is that what it is, a bid? Then it looks like you replaced our human workers that you fired and you're going to outsource it to, I'm assuming, is going to be a Leading Educators affiliated program since everything else seems to lead back to that. So. So basically I read the RFP and the addendum number 1 to the RFP where there's a corrected paragraph, and I didn't really get a lot of information out of that either. It was it was weird. But yeah, I just want to speak in general to the lack of information and the lack of transparency in every single agenda of every single meeting I've ever been to. And then when the questions are asked by our board members who we elected, okay, because we are the people, we're actually the ones in charge, not you guys, you don't you don't answer the questions. Ms. Fate just asked something and then Schreiber plowed over it and the question was never answered. Isn't that kind of weird? I think she should have her question answered about the funding for these Post Oak Lodge things because they don't match and it still hasn't been answered. So the more I look into this stuff, the worse it gets. There's so many conflicts of interest. Everybody sitting up there, except maybe one or two, are somehow linked to all of these things. All of these companies, all of these services, all of these leadership organizations, everybody has a financial trail back to these places. It cannot be a coincidence. I'm sorry, it's getting ridiculous. You guys must think we're stupid. We're reading this now, and we're looking it up, and we're looking at the background, and we're going to continue to be here. So maybe you should just start making these a little less airy and put the information in it, because we're just going to keep coming and asking these questions over and over. It's ridiculous. It's a crime. It's a crime.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Dr. Gist?
Items G10 through G15 will be presented by our Executive Director of Bond Projects, Mr. Chris Hudgens. Mr. Hudgens.
Thank you, Dr. Guest, Madam President, and board members. Items G10.
Pause. Hang on one sec. So we did public comment. We didn't do board member discussion.
Yes. I apologize, Ms. Marshall. Thank you so much
I
for
should have caught
reminding
that
me. It's been a Monday of Mondays. Ms. Marshall, would you like to get us started?
G9. My concern with this is, well, I guess I could just ask the question, was there a reason why it had to come before the board for information prior to the contractor being selected and the amounts being attached to
The answer is that we do this regularly in terms of putting out bid. We want to make sure that we're being clear with the board about what we're asking. So do you want to say more about that?
Yes. So from a sequencing perspective, as we try to get bids and try to continue to move the work forward, that's as part of being able to put information to the board to have discussions while we also get a chance to put the RFP out to bidding and have these two concurrent processes work together. And then as we collect information, we'll then come back and present to the board. So from the perspective of helping to move the work forward, it's two processes that are functioning concurrently.
Madam Board Member, we certainly can bring it, if you're interested, we certainly can bring it as an action item instead of a consent agenda item, or it could be moved from consent to action depending on what.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of the process, because in looking at the way that we're doing things, and there's another item that I have a concern with, and I have no problem in saying that I feel like there's a lack of transparency, and when I see this and then I'm looking at it and there's no information here, I don't understand it. I can't do anything with this, and you want me to accept it, but there's no contractor name, and I truly want to understand it. Are you going to put a contractor on here who is tied to someone, or am I going to see that on down the line? So I'm just trying to work my way through the process. That's what I'm trying to do, work my way through the process and understand, because I feel like at this stage it's a blind understanding. And I believe in an informed process.
It's actually the ultimate in transparency to bring it to the board while it's in the bid process. That's actually the most transparent thing we can do, is to say, here's something that we're reaching out to get bids for. We're not asking the board to act upon this item tonight. This is an information item. So in the interest of full transparency, we're bringing it to the board and we're saying, and the public, and saying, this is an item that we are putting out for bid. We want to make sure that you know that we're doing that. That's part of the process, and it will come back before the board with all the information that you're describing before we ask the board to act upon it.
So what are you putting out to bid? Because this is not telling me anything.
So as we go through the process, and it allows us to put the information in
Guys,
front
if you guys could please keep the extraneous comments down so that we can all hear the discussion that's being had up here, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, from a process perspective, it allows us to put the information to the board, to have some questions and conversations around it, so that then, as we are also getting bids from respective individuals, we can go ahead and have those additional conversations with folks that are going to be bidding for this RFP. So because it's in the bidding process right now, we don't have that information available here. But once the bids are processed, get the lowest responsible bidder, then that information comes back to the board. From the perspective of what the work entails, so what we're working through right now, particularly with my team, as we move into providing support for our principals, we've redefined how we plan and practice, or not practice, but how we plan and support all of our allocations, our Title I budgets. How are we managing our placements of resources at the school level? So this is part of supporting that work with our principals, and it helps support my team to move away from the traditional building accounting reports, putting reports that are somewhat more financial, that don't necessarily are practical to our school leaders. So this is part of that work to help train my staff to put us in a position to really support our school leaders. So it's an aspect of building capacity so that we can then get the training and then be able to support our school leaders.
I think that if we really want to bridge the gap between the board, the district, and community, what we need to do is, in speaking, in our language, in our communication, we need to be clear and concise. Our communication needs to be open, because when I look at this, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm sure the community, when they read it, they don't know what you're talking about. And we may, as a district, as a board, as members of the team, have legitimate reasons to do things, and we may be operating with the best intention of the world. But, you know, there's a scripture that says, don't let your good be evil spoken of. If we're not clear in what we're doing by writing it out, and write the vision and making it plain, people can take that and get all kind of misunderstanding. So I would encourage us, if it takes 3 or 4 more sheets of paper to write it out, that everyone can understand it, that we do that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion items on G9? Dr. Gist, I would ask that when this item comes back, it come back either as an action item or as an information item again, so that we can, it will be flagged and that we can look at it again.
We will definitely do that and take that feedback and make sure that that we are using more clear language. We can certainly work on that. Thank you for that feedback. We're going to now move to the items G10 through G15 that we jumped to accidentally. So our Executive Director of Bond Projects, Mr. Chris Hudgens.
Thank you, Dr. Guest. Items G10 is to approve a permanent right-of-way agreement with the Oklahoma National Gas Company for a portion of the Owen Elementary site. They will pay the district $10 for this right-of-way. There's an existing gas line on their property now, and they need to have access to it to properly maintain that utility. Item G11 is to enter into an electronic system access agreement with ONG, a division of One Gas, that will allow the district energy specialist to electronically access the natural gas usage and billing information, and it will give us real-time information, and we haven't had that access previously. Item G12 is to approve change order number 1 with Flintco Construction for the work at McLean Fieldhouse. This is a deduct change order in the amount of $75,000. Utility allowances for this project were not used, and this McLean High School project is finished now and is part of the 2015 bond. G13 is to approve change order number 1 with American Air Conditioning for the HVAC replacement at Hamilton Elementary. This project was the additional cost is $41,539. Additional units were needed to be replaced, and the project is part of the 2015 bond issue. Item G14 is to increase the service contract with Ramsey System Services. It's an independent project manager providing energy management systems. This is also part of the 2015 bond issue. And item G15 is to approve the purchase of LED stage lighting from Integrated Lighting Systems for Hale High School. The existing lights are not LED and are in need of it being replaced. This is all part of the 2015 bond issue. And this work is going to take place over the summer. Are there any questions over any of those items?
Ms. Marshall?
G12, the $75,000. Now, what happens
To
with
that money?
Yes.
So that money goes back into the bond. So that so there is an encumbrance of $75,000 now to Flintco. So this deduct change order, we're able to release those encumbrances, and it goes back into the bond for other projects to be spent on. So
Other projects in another school or for McLean?
no, for well, this is part of the athletic project. So other projects, typically those will go back into the athletic fund. So right now, currently out to bid is the Carver Middle School stadium improvements. So that could go back into that project for that encumbrance. So typically those funds stay in the athletic funds. They're bond allocated, so they would stay in the project, and it's project per project basis.
So who would make a request? How's that process?
Well, that process for additional work, that would go through the bond oversight. We have a committee, an outside committee that oversees all of our projects. So we're concentrating on finishing all of the projects that are in the bond book. So any type of additional projects would actually go through the bond committee and be approved by the bond committee prior to being done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And our last information item tonight is G16. This will be presented by Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Jorge Robles. Mr. Robles.
Thank you, Dr. Gist, President Keller, members of the board. Item G16 is to enter into agreement with Resolute PR LLC. This is a one-time engagement to support the work of the creation of high-quality personalized marketing materials for every Tulsa public school. So to help them with the student enrollment, as well as supporting the communication and the education of our families around our new improved enrollment process. We want to make sure that families are informed, we increase participation and access. Resolute is a local company that has worked with our neighborhood schools extensively at our Kendall Whittier neighborhood schools, so they know our programs and information, and they're very experienced and have a solid reputation locally. And this work is, as stated previously, is funded by grants managed by the Foundation for Tulsa Public Schools.
Before we take board member questions, we have a speaker, Mrs. Etta Taylor. Mrs. Taylor.
Let me just say, I'm going to bring my questions or information with regards to student privacy. So I'm coming, and if you can correct me later on anything, but this is in regards to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974 and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act of 1988. So my questions are that I hope we get addressed at some point. How many students, how many schools and or districts are being supported right now by Resolute PR LLC? What reasonable control will our families and students have over the collection, storage, and use of relevant personal education information? Will the district designate a privacy and or security officer to ensure compliance with privacy laws? What is TPS required of Resolute PR LLC in the way of policies and procedures to effectively and appropriately handle data breaches, including procedures to notify students and families? Are there any comprehensive protocol to ensure that privacy and safety of student data, and that includes the collection of storage, dissemination, and destruction of student data? Will there be a contract between the district and Resolute to provide for the ownership of student data upon dissolution of service provided for the safekeeping of our student data after the service relationship is ended, and permit the use of student data only in ways necessary to fulfill the contract with the school district or school itself? What is the justification and benefit to access our students' information to a third party? And as parents and concerned citizens, we are all about supporting our students and such, but we know that the best way to market our schools is to make sure that we're putting out good product, okay? So our students are actually our best sellers of our schools. And I remember a time when our students put on programs, and we would have students go across the district and see what was available at these schools. So instead of us spending this kind of money for a third party, why don't we just let our students speak for themselves with our schools? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. Are there any questions from the board? Dr. Hosmer.
Yeah, so I want to go back to this question of donor funds. And in terms of clarification, so the Foundation for Tulsa School consolidates donations and then reallocates them, yes?
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially how it works. And they reallocate these according to district requests. So in other words, there's a process where the district goes to the foundation and says, we need help with X, Y, and Z.
That I can actually help, Dr. Hosmer. The Foundation for Tulsa Schools President Brian Paschal works with his board. His board seeks to understand our priorities, and then they support us on funding our priorities. So several years ago, we were very focused on social emotional learning when we were beginning to launch that work, and so the foundation board was very interested in supporting that priority. Over time, those have shifted. Now they are really helping on summer learning, for example, and helping to raise money to accentuate the types of programming so that we don't have half-day summer school, but we can have full-day summer programming for youth. So in essence, yes, they work with us on priorities. As other philanthropic entities want to contribute to the district, the foundation serves as the point in understanding what they want, what priorities they want to support, and then channeling those monies into those priorities.
So thank you. First of all, how is a firm like Resolute selected? Is there a bidding process, competitive bidding? Is this, what's the relationship between the district and the foundation and donors when it comes to selecting a contractor?
So in many instances, we will go out to bid based upon what the body of work was. In my understanding, and Chief Robles can provide more details, in this instance, we started out knowing that Resolute had already done work in our schools, particularly in Kendall Whittier, Sequoia, Rogers as examples. They knew our district, and given the work that we wanted to do with them to create marketing collateral for our schools to help them with the enrollment process, we went with a local organization that we knew had experience in our schools.
That's good. One last question, and I presume that conflict of interest provisions are in place when we make these kinds of selections.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Marshall.
Thank you, Dr. Hosmer. You asked most of my questions. Also, I just want to get to the bottom of it. I don't have time to dance around. It's my understanding that the CEO, Ms. Morgan, is on the board of directors for Collegiate Hall.
I don't know.
That's from my Googling and looking, and that's what I came across. So I have some concerns given the fact we just went through this with the school in the other side of the state, private school or charter school taking student records and mailing lists and mailing out information and all of that. I just have a problem when we are contracting with individuals. We are a authorizer for Collegiate Hall, and then the CEO of this PR firm is on the board of directors. Help me with that.
So perhaps,
Well, maybe it would be helpful to talk about the work that Resolute is doing.
Right.
No, I don't want to go around.
now,
Mr. Robles, if you could respond
So-
to that, please.
yeah, so I
And then
think
we
the
can come back
nature of
to
the
Ms.
work,
Marshall's question.
thank you, Dr. Gist. The nature of the work, Ms. Marshall, is the people from this company met with each one of our principals at every one of the schools and captured the information of what they wanted to speak to regarding their vision for the school, their programming, as well as the aspects that they wanted to highlight for our families, so that then they could put together material that the school leaders could use. So that there was an iterative process where the folks from Resolute met with the principals, captured all this information, put it back together, had the principals of every single school review that material, make comments, revise it again, and then provide it back to the school leaders so that they could use that as means for them to connect with families, showcase what they offer in terms of programs, after-school activities, their vision, culture, etc. So the ultimate product was signed off by every single principal of every single school.
You know, all of that is good. As a pre-sentence investigator for the state, one of the largest cases I investigated was an individual who worked for a company, and he was one of the best workers they had. He had rave reviews on everything that he did for the company, but he embezzled. So what I'm saying is the company can be doing its job, but at the same time, we have student records that there will be accessing. We have an individual who is attached to a charter school, and we are a public school entity. And I have issues with us, and I think we all should have that issue because it's a conflict of interest. It's a big conflict of interest. We have high-ranking people even within this district who sit on charter school boards of directors right now. We are conflicted all the way across, and we wonder why the community does not trust us.
So, Ms. Marshall, I appreciate the concern. Just want to clarify that in this case, there's no student records whatsoever shared with the company. All the information that was handled by the company was specifically what the principal provided regarding programming and their vision and their culture. There are no student records of any kind that was utilized for this work.
And to be clear, to remind the board, anytime that the district does engage in exchanging any form of student information, the board approves a data sharing agreement with the organization that we're working with. So each year we'll bring you data sharing agreements for organizations like Impact Tulsa, or the Opportunity Project might be another example. So anytime we're exchanging any kind of information, it goes through legal review. We're very particular about what's shared. We never share student identifiable data in unsafe ways. We're very mindful of that because we want to protect the privacy of our students, and the board must approve those data sharing agreements.
Just because we have dealt with an agency or an individual before, I do not think that that should qualify them to automatically get a contract. I think a contract should be put out to bid. If we're going to be fair and transparent, put the contract out to bid.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Ms. Woolley.
I just want to clear on the bidding question. Is there a threshold at which we are required to get a bid that would give us a little direction on how we choose, how you guys are choosing whether or not to do that?
We need to get back
Okay.
to the board. There is,
Okay.
and that's absolutely something. And part of it is just I'm getting the numbers jumbled up because depending whether it's federal funds, if it's child nutrition funds, and a variety of different things, but there is.
Okay, thank you. Next, would this, just to clarify, because I know I've heard from a couple of folks in the community a concern about this item in particular, and one of the concerns people have is whether or not Resolute would be providing any sort of materials for our charter partners, or will they just be for traditional TPS public schools, the materials?
So the work was for all schools.
So that includes our charter?
TPS authorized charter schools too.
Okay. The next question is, it sounds like you're saying the work's already been done. Has the work already been done? This is things that have happened already?
The majority of it has, yes.
Okay.
It sounds like maybe you have a follow-up question to that, Ms. Woolley, that I can respond to.
I actually don't have I was just confused because I thought this was something that we were looking at in the future, but the commentary sounded as though it was past tense, so I was just trying to clarify.
The materials were developed so they can be used every year. It's a big lift to create the marketing materials and the programming for the school so they can be minor updates that principals can do every year. So there's a repository of resources that then every school can use every cycle, every year when they're engaging in marketing. And most of our schools are marketing throughout the year to try to recruit families that are moving into their neighborhoods.
Guys, if you would please keep the commentary down so that we can all hear. Again, I would really appreciate some decorum. Thank you. Dr. Gist, would you like to address that question any further?
Yes, did you have a follow-up on that, or do you want me to do that and then?
Well, I have several questions.
Okay. So I want to make sure that the board understands the reason that we're bringing it to you now and the reason it didn't come to you before. And that has to do with the thresholds that you were asking about, Ms. Woolley. So when it reaches a certain threshold, if the work reaches a certain threshold, then we need to bring it to you. It hadn't reached that threshold in the way that the contract had been done. It has now, so we're bringing it to the Board of Education. So, and I just want to remind, and I know you said this, Mr. Robles, but just as a reminder, what this work was about, because this is incredibly exciting work that we're able to do because of donor funds. So we set out in this year to redo our enrollment system, and we set out to say to Tulsans that we want to put our best foot forward with our schools, and we want community members to know that their neighborhood schools are amazing options. And while there's no doubt that current students and family members and teachers themselves are great spokespeople for that work, it also matters very much how they present themselves. So we're very grateful that because of some private money, we were able to enter into a contract a couple of them actually, to allow us to do this work, to work with principals and school teams to develop materials so that they could present themselves to the public and make it really clear in the whole enrollment process why their school is a great choice and why families should choose their school.
Ms. Schreiber.
Regarding the data, I mean, Ms. Shannon or Ms. Burke could probably answer this, but there's several federal and state regulations regarding governing the district's use of student data that we have to comply with. Is that not correct?
That's exactly correct. We take our students' information, whether it's confidential or not, incredibly, we're very protective of it, to be mild about it. In fact, my colleagues frequently say, really, you're going to be that cautious? Like, yes. We absolutely protect student data to the best of our abilities. We have extensive data sharing agreements anytime we share student data, even if it's not personally identifiable data. There is a data sharing agreement that goes with it that the vendor must sign.
And unrelated to the data, but a follow-up question. If I'm remembering right, the first enrollment window generated about 4 times the applications than the past.
That is correct.
So, I mean, one could conclude that Resolute did a hell of a job in getting the information out to people to use the enrollment process and did exactly what we want to do, which is increase enrollment applications.
Correct.
Ms. Marshall, you have a follow-up?
My follow-up would be that we just went through a $20 million shortfall. We come here tonight and we say that the work has already begun. You're asking for $112,150 to pay a PR person, and I think that is utterly ridiculous and irresponsible. When $112,000 could have been used to bring something like a program to educate children. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why we're making the decisions that we're making. But what I do know is that this board acts irresponsibly on a regular basis. Thank you.
Dr. Hosmer.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I can appreciate the good work that Resolute's doing. That sounds fine to me. My concern and my questions really had to do with process, and I'm really not sure I understand how this process works, right? And so we have funds that are consolidated by the foundation, and then we have a vendor that is chosen. We don't know whether there's a relationship between that vendor and the donors and how this works. Like I said, I presume there are conflict of interest provisions in place. I imagine that to be the case. But I think from my perspective, and I think I'm hearing this elsewhere, this looks like we need a little bit more transparency and a little more clarity on how we do things, particularly since the work's already been done and this is coming to the board right now.
So it sounds like what you're asking for is similar to what Ms. Woolley was asking for, which is understanding about the process and the different levels and things like that. Yeah.
Could we maybe get some follow-up on that in 2 weeks when we meet, like exactly what thresholds are for those different things? So not only we in this room, you know, at the front here know what's going on, but the people in the community who may have questions trying to understand, like, well, at what point do we get to the point where it has to go in front of the board? So maybe just a little more information so folks understand that you guys do have some liberty to make some choices until there are a certain threshold, and then we need to talk about that probably a little more closely. Thank you.
One last thing, and I think that we need to take a good look at our security, because I do know from my constituents that charter schools are actively sending out information to them with their children's names on it. And so mailing lists have gotten out some way to our constituencies. So
We can actually respond to that right now, Ms. Marshall. It's actually an area of frustration for us as well. We are, maybe Ms. Burke, do you want to talk about that? You probably could do a better job than I can. It has to do with public records, honestly, and so.
Right. So under federal law, there's a category of information called directory information that includes the names, addresses, and what other types of information that we identify as directory information within our policies. And that information, unless a parent actively says, I do not want it released, we must release it.
So the issue is,
our preference would be not to release it, just so that we're clear. That's our preference, and we've actually asked for directory information to be able to respond accordingly, to do the same thing, which is to tell people about our schools as well. And other people are not following the law in the same way, which is something we've figured, considered our alternatives for that. But it is absolutely the law, and it is something that is just as frustrating to us as to everyone else.
So is this something that we can send out a notice to our parents that they need to check the box if they don't want that directory information shared?
We're required by law to provide that information and that notice to parents annually, and we do in our Student Guide for Success.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Schreiber, did you have a question?
I would say the issue is that some charter schools are doing public records requests of us and receiving the directory information about students' name and address via that request, but that doesn't go both ways. We're not able to request that of them, even though they're a public entity receiving public dollars as well.
Right. The only thing I would adjust about that is that we actually do request it. They just deny the request.
And yet we continue to assist them in enrolling their students and close down our district.
We continue to follow the law, Ms. Marshall, and we're frustrated by the fact that they aren't following the law.
Well, I don't think the law said that we have to include them in our enrollment plan. I don't believe the law said that we have to include them in our new enrollment system.
Fair. I apologize, Ms. Marshall. I thought you were talking about their directory information still. Yes, we decided to include them in our enrollment system because we wanted it to be one system, one date, one stop. And so we absolutely did, with donor funds, include them in this particular work and include them in the enrollment system so that the whole goal is to make this a clear process for families so that families who are our priority have the opportunity to understand the whole lay of the land, what their choices are, what their options are within the Tulsa Public Schools family, and have one deadline and one process that they can follow for application.
Excellent. So that brings us to staff reports this evening. Dr. Gist, do you have any staff reports?
We do not have any additional information tonight, Madam President.
Thank you. Are there any reports from board members? Ms. Fate.
I know you all have already gotten at least one notification, but get your calendars out and mark the Region 4 meeting is April 16th, and it's going to be in Jinx. So we'll get you the further detailed information. But talking about some board members not always understanding how things work, there are several different presentations that the OSSBA does provide in training board members. So if you're interested in that, and for this particular meeting, you'll get 1 credit for new laws and 1 ethics credit. So it sounds like it'll be a good meeting.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fate. Ms. Wester.
So I wanted to mention a couple of things. One is that the survey for the Will Rogers College Junior and High School Stadium is live in the Rogers website. If you go to the Rogers website and go scroll down to the helpful information, the first one under that section is the survey, and it's also available in Spanish and in English. And the second was that I had the privilege of actually getting a chance to speak to some high school students at Rogers, actually, Mr. Nelson's English class, most of which were Latinx students, and many of their families don't know what a board is in a public school setting and what it does. I got a chance to explain to them that public schools in the United States have school boards and how board members are elected into the board and the requirements for it. So many of them didn't know that you could be 18 with a high school diploma. So it was really great, and I believe Mr. Nelson and some of his students will be coming to the board later on at another meeting to talk about some of the great things they've been learning in class.
That sounds like an awesome experience, Ms. Wester. Thank you for sharing. Are there any other board member reports? No? Seeing none, we have 6 individuals who have signed up to speak this evening under citizens' comments. As a reminder, you will have 5 minutes to address the board. At the end of those 5 minutes, we ask that you please respect your time limit. Also, the board will not be entering into discussion or comment with the speaker during your 5 minutes as usual. So our first speaker this evening is Ms. Heather Ann Hoover, and she has signed up to speak to the reorganization of Indian education and the parent committee. Ms. Hoover.
Halito to Madam President, Dr. Gist, and the board and staff here this evening. And Oklachimki, those mean hello, and a Choctaw prayer for me praying as I speak this evening for help from He who awakens us all. My name is Heather Ann Hoover. My children and I are citizens and members of the Choctaw Nation. I have a 3rd grade daughter, Emmeline, at Mayo, and an 8th grade daughter, Chloe, who graduated from Mayo in 2017 and is currently at TSAS. Please understand that I am also a member of the TPS Indian Ed Parent Committee. However, I am here on my own accord, not speaking on their behalf, but I am speaking on the behalf of my children. And please also note, I have been in Claremore Indian Hospital twice in the last 24 hours. I'm having an allergic reaction to a medication. I don't know what it is. My tongue is swollen, so if you wouldn't mind, please giving me a little grace and mercy as I speak this evening. And I apologize if I sound like I'm having marbles in my mouth. But I am here, and I'm still here in pain and committed to be here to make sure the children get the best and the right things done for TPS children, and my Choctaw determined spirit is what brings me here. On January 17th, TPS rolled out a proposal as to reorganization. They wanted for TPS Indian Ed. However, this was not originally sent to the Cherokee or Muskogee Creek Nation chiefs or the Indian Ed Parent Committee or the public to review to analyze before rolling it out. Once TPS saw we all did not agree or want the reorganization done in the way it was presented, the committee and parent committee, thank you very much, meeting began work on a different plan. Please note that although we are having workshops this week to make a plan, the numbers for 506 forms still have time to be turned in until March the 12th. Dr. Treg Jorgensen, our Mayo's assigned Indian Ed resource advisor, and I, we're at Mayo's last Thursday. We set up a booth and got 15 506 forms completed. Although 6 of those were duplicates, 9 were determined to be newly identified Native children that will count in next year's 2020 budget and next year's grant. That's one school in one night. Imagine what we can accomplish if we did this at all the schools. I've been asking for that since I got on the board in August. First being told, no, parents can't do this, and that it was required for the staff to be doing it. Then I was told we as parents can sign a disclosure form and help. There are only 7 resource advisors. They can't be at all the parent-teacher conferences or all the back-to-school nights, as most of those schools have them on the same nights. But parents like myself can help accomplish this. The Cherokee Nation last week gave $219,000 last Thursday. That's double from what that was the year before. It was noted that $191,699 in tag money was for fiscal year 2020, leaving $27,826 unallocated in the budget from the $219,525.36. That's what was actually received from the Cherokee Nation. Where's that 27,000 plus going? Especially after already noting a shortfall in the Indian Ed budget. These numbers should be playing into year 2020 also. And I want to see a final count of what they anticipate the shortfall to be, because that number has changed multiple times, which again are all based on estimates. We won't know the actual numbers till May. Please know that when TPS brings you a copy of the new improved version of the reorganization, that it will be based on estimates. We won't know how much money we're going to get until May 1st, 2020 from the feds after we return the numbers from 3/12/2020. I don't understand why we're doing a reorganization in the 4th year of a 4-year grant. We should be keeping everything the same for the final year and taking the full next year to decide how the first year of the new grant should be rolled out in any reorganization. The Indian Ed Department has 7 members collectively, adding up to 159 years of cultural knowledge. I try not to cry. We need that. That's cultural knowledge that can't be replaced and needs to be remained.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover. I'm so sorry. And I hope that you get to feeling better soon. Mr. Harris?
And Dr. Guest, each and every one of you guys. My name is Larry Harris. I'm the Vice President of 100 Black Men Tulsa chapter. I'm also the Chairman of the curriculum program that we have in our schools. We're presently in 9 different schools. We have 157 young mentees. We have a full-blown curriculum that we use. The curriculum we use is a nationally based and internationally based curriculum. We're like a surrogate father to a lot of the young men in the school system. We are transparent, each and every last one of us. We value our kids very, very, very much. Our young black and our young Latinos, and we also have Caucasians in our organizations. We have had nothing but positive we had a number of positive words come from the different schools. We keep in touch with each and every school administrative staff. So I just came up because I had a long talk with Dr. Guest, and we're very happy. We have no problems with what you guys are doing with CHAMPS. We are going to try to collaborate with them on certain issues and certain things. We're trying to get more men in these schools is our main objective. More men is men. We're not saying what you want to call it, sperm donors. We're looking for men. We're looking for men. We're looking for someone when a young man see him, he know what he's dealing with. So I have no problem with champions. I talked with Mr. Dyer. We had a long talk all day today, and we came to a very good understanding. So I just want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate each and every one of you here and the job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. Ms. Kate Baker.
Evening. My name is Kate Baker. I have had many roles in my lifelong relationship with TPS. I've been a student, a child of a TPS teacher, a teacher's assistant, and teacher myself. I'm now a parent and community member, and I have the great honor of working with our TPS teachers every day as their TCTA and OEA advocate. I've been working with Indian Ed since January, and I've had the opportunity to learn a lot from them. For instance, before starting working with them in January, I didn't know that there was a parent committee who were tasked with approval of programming and signing off on the budget. The explanation given in the law for the parent committee is to act as a counterbalance because of the historically devastating impacts of people from outside of the Native community making educational decisions for Native American children. The parent committee has been repeatedly circumvented in the redesign process. TPS has made decisions and began moving on plans that were made without the consultation of the parent committee, Native community, Indian Ed resource advisors, or anybody within that community. It concerns me to have a group of parents volunteering and giving their time and not being given the respect of authentic collaboration. It is upsetting to talk to parents who feel like they are not being listened to or considered when they are giving so much and when the expectation of the parent committee is to advise and direct the use of the grant money that funds the Indian Education Program. TPS recently put together a survey for the Indian Education Program, which the parent committee directly said they did not approve of and did not want sent out until they had had the opportunity to make changes and vote on it as a parent committee. The survey was sent out anyway. Again, the approval and wishes of the parent committee were not just not listened to this time, but the parent committee made clear what their wishes were, and they were actively ignored. The parents and community want to be part of the conversation before decisions are made for our children and their schools. People want to feel like they are a real, genuine, and authentic part of the conversation, not have reasoning for decisions explained to them after the fact. That is not how collaboration works. Collaboration comes from a real, open-ended conversation without being directed or prompted toward an outcome. This goes far beyond the Indian Education programming and the parent committee. It is all of Tulsa and the TPS community who want to be involved in the conversation in an authentic way. Additionally, when making changes in a program, the job roles can be changed. The position doesn't have to be eliminated. It doesn't have to be vacated. It is an option to make changes to a job without causing such upheaval in a program and to the lives of the educators who dedicate their careers to the students in TPS. Let me close with this. I'd like us to learn from what's happened, and I'd like us to move forward and try to prevent the same mistakes in the future. So as changes need to be made, when things need to be shifted, I hope that you will seek real collaboration from the beginning. Come to the conversation without a plan or a desired outcome, but with an open ear for what the community truly wants. The key in all of this is authentic collaboration from the beginning. I will also implore the board to listen to the parent committee and make sure the proposal that TPS brings before you, when they do bring it forward, is first approved by the Indian Education Parent Committee. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Baker. Ms. Black, if you would.
Pejne Vadamanea Nasasista Wakomastat Wajaji Ponka Prairie Band Potawatomi. Good day, my name is Standing. I'm Cheyenne. I also come from the Osage, Ponca, and Prairie Band Potawatomi people. I want to take the time to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight before you. I come before you today as President-elect of the Oklahoma Council for Indian Education, a grassroots Native educational organization which exists to promote, advocate, support, and sustain Indian education throughout the state of Oklahoma for the past 4 decades. OC members come from tribal education departments, public school districts, Indian education programs, institution of higher education, Native organizations, parents and relatives, and Native communities throughout the state to provide support for our Native students in their course of their educational journey. Leadership from OC have been involved at the highest levels of Indian education throughout the existence and continue to provide leadership at the national level to help shape into the course of Indian education throughout Indian country, and that is why I'm compelled to be here this evening. We appreciate the meetings in late January that included the Oklahoma Council for Indian Education, the National Indian Education Association, who was supportive of this letter, and representatives from the Greater Tulsa Area Indian Affairs Commission. This was definitely an informative experience. In early January, OC began receiving concerned messages, phone calls, and requests for assistance from members of the TPS Indian Education community. Since then, on behalf of our TPS Indian family, some of our board members have attended several stakeholder conversations about the proposed restructuring of the Indian Education program for the upcoming year. We have attended several of your public meetings and community conversations and reviewed documents and presentations involving the proposed restructuring of the Indian Education program. However, our in-person participation in meetings and review of materials does not indicate to us a need for any proposed reorganization. OC does not support any reorganization presented by Tulsa Public Schools for the following reasons. We have found very limited collaboration with Indian education stakeholders before the initiation of this restructuring process. Stakeholders are important in making a change of the magnitude outlined in the proposal, particularly the parent committee. It is unclear how the proposed plan will save money for the program, continuing to provide relevant resources, or how services will be elevated. The school's district review of complaints and address of personal concerns from the Indian education staff appear to have been unanswered or discounted. The proposal aims to eliminate 7 certified teacher positions. These positions would be replaced by potentially non-certified staff. Title VI programs across the country strive to utilize certified teachers in these positions to engage with students in learning culture and improving academic performance. Something that TPS currently has in place. The role of professional Native educators serves dual purpose for Native students. First, they engage on an equitable basis with classroom teachers and administrators. Secondly, they serve as role models for Native students and their families, thereby elaborating their role within the Native community. OC recommends dismissing or postponing the reorganization for 12 months to gather sufficient data as well as appropriate feedback from students, parents, and tribal nations, particularly the parent committee that supports a reorganization of this program. This can be presented to the Indian community in line with the consultation schedule available online. Tulsa Public Schools Indian Education Program has always been a role model for Title VI programs in Oklahoma and nationally. Its leadership has been at the forefront of Indian education since the late 70s. The program has been nationally recognized as an exemplary program by the United States Department of Education's Office of Indian Education and the Bureau of Indian Education's Johnson O'Malley program over the years. This model program should not be decimated by personality differences and leadership dissatisfaction. It is our hope that continued collaboration with key stakeholders will help structure this program as your parents would prefer and elevate the service of this distinguished staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Ms. Remington.
I have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. Number one was the opt-out that Ms. Burke had brought up. It is very hard to opt out of testing, just so you're aware, and also out of the quote-quote voluntary student directories. I actually tried to do this last week. ESC was not aware of how to do it. Whenever you ask for the data from principals, they don't even know how to tell us how to do it. Just also so that you do know, we also are told that we can't opt our kids out of MAP testing or they won't be able to get their license before 16. I mean, at 16. And also, why did Collegiate Hall contact us? I don't understand that. I still don't get it whenever I've never submitted my child to be on any kind of student directory. And do we really have researchers from the Wallace Foundation currently in our classrooms? Because that's what I'm hearing from parents at McClure. The other thing that I had on here about the opt-out policy was we would like to see what information you are giving out about our students. So I'm assuming that we can find that out as well whenever we are opting our children out. The other thing that I had on here that I wanted to talk to the board about was this program called Handle with Care. I've never seen anything about this at all with TPS, but I did see this in the PLAC group that Dr. Giss has motioned some of us to join. Oklahoma is the #1 state in the U.S. for childhood trauma. The Tulsa Sheriff's Office and Berry Hill Public Schools are actually collaborating right now to help students impacted by trauma at home. Now when deputies are encountering a potentially distressed child while responding to an emergency in Berry Hill, they'll notify the school district with a simple message, handle with care. I feel like this would greatly be something good for our students as well at TPS, and I would like to see our school district to consider enacting this as well. I mean, I know that what I've seen with the schools, that when you try to talk to them about any kind of issue, like the fact that my children have gone through this myself. I don't share a lot of information about me. I'm actually a stepmother of children that have been abandoned by their mother. So with that being said, I've tried to contact the school to let them know what's going on, and they felt like this was something that would be a great thing whenever I've made reports to the police about what's happened. So I feel like this is something that definitely the district should look into, the Handle with Care program, because if we could have the ability to have parents that are going through something to be able to call, the district or whatever, that's not happening right now, let alone should we have the police department working with the district as well. I think that would be a good thing in the right direction, instead of kids getting put into disciplinary, like with Trace and different things like that. But I was going to talk about Indian Ed, but I think that there has definitely been a lot of more important speakers. If there was a possibility, I would love to give my time actually to the person that was cut off, but I'm sure that it's not. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Remington. Mr. Aaron Griffith.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, President, staff, patrons. Hezce, Aaron Jehojeff Kudos, Hezce Muskogee. I'm here tonight to talk about Indian education, but first let me give you my disclaimer. I'm here to speak for myself. These are my own individual views and no one else's, and they're not meant to represent any organization or anything else I might be a part of. This is all me tonight. I'm here to talk tonight about the reorganization of the Indian Ed program. And my concerns, first of all, are that we need to think about this reorganization in terms of how we are funded, and that's by student counts. So let me just give you some numbers here. A decade ago, we were serving 4,000 students with 7 resource advisors. Approximately, these aren't exact numbers here, I'm rounding up. We're now down to approximately, the numbers are changing a lot right now, so I'm just going to use 3,100 as a number here. So that takes us down to 7 resource advisors serving, and that would make 443 students per resource advisor they're serving, as opposed to the 571 they were serving a decade ago per resource advisor. You take that down to 6, that goes down to 517 students per resource advisor. Okay? That's acceptable to me. You know, it's close to what we've been doing in the past, but you go any lower than that, you go down to 5 resource advisors, you're now talking about having to try to have our resource advisors serve 620 students per resource advisor. I mean, I don't know how many teachers in Tulsa Public Schools serve 443 students in the course of their career during a year. I don't know that there's any that serve that many. So they do a lot of work with very little resources and very little support from the district in the past. Hopefully that's changing. I feel like that's changing. You know, the contract that was mentioned earlier about Resolute, if it's serving all schools, I hope that it will be serving Indian Ed too, because we need a lot of help with our enrollment. That's a problem for us too, just like the wider problems with the district enrollment going down. So I wanted to remind everyone that we don't have numbers to go off of, even good estimates, until after March 12th. I know you'll be probably asked on the 23rd to consider this. I've heard that that will be a discussion-only item. I would encourage you, you know, if there's no action at that item and it does go to another meeting, which I'm hearing will be a special meeting, please allow people to talk at that special meeting too. Don't cut off conversation if that's how you do it. Waive your rules if you can, or just schedule it for the next regular meeting if you're going to do it that way. People, this conversation will be evolving for months to come. As Heather mentioned, some of these numbers we may not know verified in stone until May. I'm going to run out of time, aren't I? Let me just say that the timeline we have, I'm not entirely sure that we can't work, that this timeline is non-negotiable. Because when we changed from the manager title, that title was changed, the job form was created and still awaiting approval in May of 2018. Okay? Mitch announced, the former coordinator announced his retirement in March. We're in March right now. The new manager wasn't hired until July. So, you know, I think this reorganization, we can probably push it back a week or two and not hurt anything, looking at this schedule and this timeline here. I would say this is the 4th year of a 4-year contract. This conversation, which I do believe has merit. I believe the conversation has merit. The discussion has merit. What we need to do is follow the proper process, the proper protocols, and take the time, as Allison said, to really review this and do this. I'm open to putting it all on the table. I'm open to considering everything that the district has to offer, but not for this grant year. We need to try to keep what we have. I understand if we have to eliminate 1 resource advisor. For myself personally, that's all I can accept, because every other way I look at this, there's no way I can justify this reorganization being any broader or any more wholesale. And if it is wholesale, it needs to really be wholesale, and it needs to be across the board. That means every position within the department needs to be re-advertised. It can't just, there's no cherry picking positions. So I'm about to lose it here, but I just want to say we have 159 years of cumulative staff experience. We will not be able to replace that in the 4 or 5 months with people. It's not.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. We appreciate it. We appreciate all of our speakers this evening. Thank you all very much. Dr. Gist, do you have a report for us this evening?
I do, Madam President, members of the board, and Tulsans. I have a few things I want to go over. I want to start by just where we started earlier, which is that we had a really exciting day today announcing the finalists for our Support Employee of the Year and our Teacher of the Year. And, you know, we have thousands of teachers, and we choose only 5 for this honor. And so, again, we're grateful that Ms. Powell was able to be here, but we are going to, at a future meeting, bring these honorees back to introduce you to them by name and by face, but it was a really exciting day. So thanks to everyone who was a part of that and the folks who are on the committee and the Tulsa Classroom Teachers Association and others who participated in that process. I also want to say that we had a really exciting weekend full of all kinds of activities. I mentioned the school pride race. We talked about basketball. We didn't talk about elementary school basketball. We did talk about the Dream Center, but I was able to go to the tournament at the Dream Center for the elementary school students and their basketball tournament. And it's just incredibly fun, and really it was packed. There were lots and lots of participants there watching the students play, and they were really, really impressive. So it's fun to think about their engagement as well as all the skills they're learning in that activity. We also had an exciting weekend full of the arts in Tulsa Public Schools. The arts are alive and well in Tulsa Public Schools, and that was evidenced by Dancing in Wonderland, which was the performance that was put on Friday night. I was able to attend at Central High School by the Central Dance Company, and then on Saturday was able to go to a showing of Little Shop of Horrors at Edison. Both were just incredibly well done performances, so huge congratulations to those students, their teachers, and others who supported them, including parents and others who helped to make all of that happen. So on to a little different note, talking about COVID-19. We're working very, very closely with the Tulsa Health Department, with the Tulsa Emergency Management Agency, and the Oklahoma State Department of Health. The Tulsa Health Department, all of these folks have just been really incredible. We also are getting information from the Oklahoma State Department of Education as well as the U.S. Department of Education. All of these are helping us with updates and information about what's happening with the status of coronavirus COVID-19. As you all know, we did have one identified case and confirmed case in Tulsa County. No significant evidence right now of spread, but just understanding that that's very likely to come, and so we're watching it really, really closely and staying in touch with folks. One of the ways, an incredibly important way that we work to keep our schools safe and healthy, and this is true across the board, including in this instance, is through prevention. And so we want to prevent illness before it has an opportunity to take hold. So we continually evaluate and improve our health and safety practices in our schools. So for example, we monitor our schools around health issues. With students, we look at absenteeism, we monitor that, and we regularly disinfect schools. We have a system called BioSpray that allows us to disinfect a school. We also know that our parents are counting on us, and our staff members are counting on us to keep them safe and for parents to keep their babies safe. And we take that responsibility very, very seriously. So while we don't know right now what will happen here in Tulsa, we know how this virus is spread, and it's spread very similarly to the way other illnesses are spread, through coughing and sneezing, close personal contact, touching surfaces, and then touching your face. So in order to prevent this spread, we want to make sure that we're washing our hands as frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, and of course, singing of songs, helping our students to understand how to do this. I'm not going to ask Board Member Schreiber to sing her example, but we all have our own. I have my own. Whatever song helps you to remember how long you should be washing your hands. And then, of course, modeling that for our students, teaching that to our students is incredibly important. When hand washing is unavailable, hand sanitizers that have at least 60% alcohol can be used. Staying home when you're sick and keeping sick children home, covering your nose and mouth when coughing or sneezing, sneezing, and then avoiding close contact. We've been all elbow bumping and virtually hugging and other kinds of things to prevent that spread. If you do find symptoms in you or a family member, please contact your doctor as appropriate. Avoid contact with others. Wash your hands even more often, and like we said, please stay home. So people can find more information at www.tulsaschools.org/coronavirus. And we just wanted to make sure that we're sharing that information. We will continue. We put out a letter to families and staff on Friday, and we'll continue to update folks as new information comes along. So I want to address Indian education as well. So as everyone is very fully aware, we announced a timeline for changes to the Indian education team to respond to changing budgets and changing numbers of students. We've got gotten a lot of feedback, and what this is going to help us do is come out of this stronger than we were when we went into this. As difficult and rocky as it has been, I'm confident that we will come out of this stronger than ever before. So we originally went into this listening phase, and our original impression was that we would listen and then use the feedback that we were getting to make modifications to the proposal. And what became very quickly clear is that actually what folks were asking of us was to set that proposal aside completely. And so I want to make sure that everyone understands that's exactly what we have done. There is no proposal right now that is being modified or adjusted. What we are doing is starting over and listening. So we've had two additional community meetings, one on February 22nd and one on the 26th. We had parents, students, staff members, teachers, grandparents, community members, other advocates come, and they engaged in small group discussions, and they discussed 3 questions: what's working well in Indian education, what needs improvement, what 3 to 5 services and supports are most important for your child, and what do you want Tulsa Public Schools to know about the needs of Native American students. We got some really great feedback from those community meetings. In addition to that, we released a community-wide survey that went out to all of our families and received about 3,000 responses. Now, I want to be clear that this is in addition to the Johnson O'Malley needs assessment that is approved by the parent committee. It has some similarities. That needs assessment, though, only goes to families, and it can only be completed by one household at a time, and it can only be completed by families whose children qualify for Johnson O'Malley funds, which is a different set of students. It's a subset of the students who qualify for Title VI as a whole. And so the feedback that we got at one of the community meetings, actually one in January, was to do a survey that was accessible more broadly by community members. Now, we can still slice and dice the responses because we ask people who they are at the beginning of the survey. Are they a parent? Are they a student? And so forth. So we can make some, we can see, well, what is it that parents are saying versus what students are saying and what teachers are saying and so forth. And so we sent that out. We're collecting all of that right now. And in what we're doing this week, then, there's a parent committee meeting tomorrow night. I know that they've had a subcommittee that's working on the organizational structure. We also have workshops that will be happening on Wednesday and Thursday night. These will be workshops that are made up of community stakeholders that represent students, teachers, parents. The parent committee are all included, board members who will be there, the Indian Affairs Commission representatives from the tribes, and so forth. That's just examples of the folks who will be there. What we are asking them to do, we're providing them with all of the information about the program, the budget as it's projected, because all of our budgets are projected at this point, the information about student performance, information about the costs of different positions, etc. And we are tasking these workshop participants who will be working in small groups to develop a structure with the budget that we have available to develop a structure. We will then be sharing those options that are developed by Native American stakeholders out back out again to the broader community for feedback, asking them what they like about different proposals, what questions they have about different proposals, and then we'll be receiving feedback on each of those proposals. We also will continue working with the parent committee, and we also have tribal consultations scheduled with the tribes, with the Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, and Osage Nations on March 13th. So we'll have the recommendations from the workshop participants at those conversations. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew how significantly we've changed this series of next steps based on the feedback that we've gotten, and we really appreciate the advocates who have made their voices really clear about what they needed and expected from us in this process. We're really grateful for that. I also want to say that, as has been mentioned, but just to underscore, we receive 506 forms all year round from families, but we have a window of time for the rest of this week where those 506 forms that we collect, all of the eligible ones, and they have to be completed entirely, and they have to be completed only by the family member in their entirety. And for all of those, that will help us in terms of our budget for next year. So we really appreciate anything you can do in terms of social media, spreading the word, letting your friends and family know how important it is for them to complete those forms and share that. And as parent committee members have said before, it's important because not only are there services available, but actually sometimes people will say, well, I'm not going to fill it out because I don't need services, or for whatever reason they might have. We want to make sure they know there are lots of different kinds of services that they can receive from the Indian Education Office, but also it helps us to serve all students. And so I know that's something I've heard parent committee members talk about before. So this is a quick overview of the next steps and what that's going to look like. We're continuing to post information and updates on our website at www.tulsaschools.org/Indian-education. And again, I do appreciate all the voices and all the advocates who have continued to come and speak to us, email us, come and visit in person, and come to these various meetings and stay engaged. We're very grateful for your energy, your voice, and your participation and your advocacy for children. And that concludes my report tonight, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Gist. There are no non-routine items this evening. Mr. Siren, is there any new business? Thank you very much. Our announcements. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Monday, March 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. in the Cheryl Selman Room at the Charles C. Mason Education Service Center at 3027 South New Haven. I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful spring break and that everyone gets some well-earned downtime. And we look forward to seeing you the following Monday, which would be the fourth Monday in March. Please take note of our slight shift in dates because of spring break. That being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Awesome. I will call for the vote. Ms. Woolley?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all for coming. Meeting is adjourned. 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 Adjourned.